Everybody, welcome to the Gather Veterans interview. I'm Jason, going to be just hanging out with you guys along with Lucas Clark. He is joining me today via Zoom because of all of the fun stuff happening in our world today.
Yes, sir. Good to see you.
Luke, thanks so much for joining us today. For those who don't know, Gather Veterans is just a great resource. I'm a little biased. My wife is the publisher of the magazine. Anyway, Gather Veterans is a resource for veterans all over the state of Michigan to come together and just kind of have a place to kind of connect. Even though it's a magazine, it's a great resource for people. And we're here to learn more about Lucas and just kind of his story and just connect with you. And he can relate to you, I'm sure. So, Lucas, with that said, just kind of introduce yourself and what it is you're doing right now in the veterans community.
All right. So my name is Lucas Clark. I am a Veteran Service Officer of Grand Traverse County, Department of Veterans Affairs. What I do is I help vets get connected to benefits through the VA. I also try and help our office be a one-stop shop. So not one entity in any community can do everything. So what we try and do is have the resources to connect people to the things that they need, like somebody needs a job. Well, we don't do jobs, but we know of an excellent resource for veterans to be able to gain access to employment, and that's Michigan Works. And Ken Rappeljay is a state employee that works over at Michigan Works in Traverse City on Garfield. Another thing is housing. We hook them up with SSVF, which is Supportive Services for Veterans Families. I have a stack of business cards on my desk that's probably 12 inches thick of just resources and entities in the area that specifically work for veterans and their significant others, their dependents, stuff like that.
That's awesome. And how long have you been doing that now?
I believe I'm going on to my third year here shortly.
Okay. So give us a little bit of a brief background of Lucas as a young boy wanting to be in the military and just the story surrounding. Okay, first of all, what branch did you go into? Why did you want to go to the military? And then what was your experience like? And I know that part of the question is loaded, but just kind of help us understand who you are.
Yeah, so, I mean, growing up as a little kid, I was always a cop for Halloween. A lot of kids are, but I mean, it was just always something I wanted to be able to help people or do a service. I was always calling 911 as a kid just to talk to the dispatchers and get myself in trouble. And we'd always have the fire department show up at our house and I'd get yelled at. But you know, I've always, my dad served, both of my grandpas served, a bunch of my uncles served, my great grandparents served. You know, growing up, my best friend's parents, his dad, was in the Army. And so I wanted to join the military. I knew that I wanted to. I didn't do real great in high school. It's a lot of people in the military story, but the only option that I had for myself was to join the military because I wanted to do something. I wanted to get out of town, but I also wanted to be able to do a service. And I knew that if I was going to join the military, I was going to do something that was meaningful to me. So when I originally enlisted, I was going to join the Coast Guard. I was going to be a rescue swimmer. I swam with the rescue swimmers here in Traverse City for a period throughout my junior and senior year. Trained with them at the Civic Center. They do all kinds of ridiculous stuff. And then at the end of the day, I went to enlist, and they said that there was a 2-year wait period for swimmers out of Michigan. I was like, well, I'm not going to wait 2 years, and I'm not going to join the Coast Guard doing a different job. So my next stop was the Army recruiters because I'm not going to sit inside of a ship, and I'm not going to be a Marine. I don't like the taste of crayons. So I went to the Army recruiters, and with my ASVAB score, they showed me a list of all the jobs that I could do, and there was Army diver on there. And they said, you know, you could be an Army diver. You know, that'd be a pretty sweet job. I was like, well, what do they do? And they're like, honestly, we have no idea. We've never met one. Okay, well, so I got on YouTube and watched all the ridiculous videos that they have out, and I ran across Cavalry Scout, which is a 19 Delta, and they were riding dirt bikes and dune buggies through the desert, and I was like, that's what I do right now, minus the desert part, so I might as well do that, because I love riding dirt bikes and dune buggies. I have my own dirt bike, I have my own buggy, might as well go to town. I found out very quickly that that's not what they do. They don't ride dirt bikes, and they don't ride dune buggies. I never saw one the entire time I was in the Army. But yeah, so I graduated high school. I spent that summer visiting family and friends and hanging out and having fun. And then in August, I left for basic training.
Wow. What do you say to young kids out there who are thinking about the military, maybe even teenagers who are thinking about signing up? What do you do to encourage that? What message do you give to those young kids?
Um, the message that I would send is probably the message my best friend's dad gave me right before I left for basic training. That if you're going to do anything, put everything that you have into it. Don't only try, just do it, just succeed. Especially at a time like now, we are at war. We are a nation that's at war. We are currently in conflicts, and we've been in conflicts for so long that a lot of people have forgotten about that. Especially with everything going on in the world, nobody's paying attention to what's going on in Iraq and Afghanistan, everywhere else in the country. You are joining the military during a time of war. There is a high probability that you are going to be deployed to a war zone, and you need to make sure that that is what you want to do with your life. I was 100% sure. That's why I went combat arms. And I knew that at that time I didn't know, but I know now that that was the best. Just those were the best words that could have been said to me before leaving for the military, because that carried me through all the ridiculousness in basic training, all the hazing and stuff when I first got to my unit, and the deployment at the end of the day. It got me through my deployment.
So I admire all of you who have chosen to serve our great country. And one of the things I love about it is that you guys are helping to keep it great, by the way. So thank you. Do you guys still encounter maybe people who still have a poor image of the military? And, how do you combat that thinking?
Yeah, I mean, especially in my line of work. So I deal with everybody from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Gulf War. I mean, any conflict you can think of, I've seen them. I've seen the good sides, I've seen the bad sides, I've seen the pretty and the ugly. At the end of the day, the biggest tragedy that I've seen in our country when it comes to veterans is Vietnam, and the way that our Vietnam veterans were treated while they were in the military and post-military. I got Vietnam veterans that had never filed a claim before because they no longer trust the government, they no longer trust people, their families, their friends, because of the way they were treated while they were in the military. And that was a draft. There's a high percentage of those people that went to Vietnam that didn't choose to join the military. And for them to have been treated like that because they were called upon and answered the call of their country, it infuriates me to know that I have guys walking into my office that put up with that. I go to any lengths I can help any one of my veterans, period. Anything I can do for them. I bend over backwards to do everything I can. But the Vietnam veterans, it's really, it aches inside to know the things that they dealt with, and it just pushes me that much harder to fight for them and for their benefits, to make sure that they know that we care. Be as empathetic as possible, because their story is my story. I worked with a lot of Vietnam veterans and heard a lot of their stories, and it's not any different than Afghanistan when I was there.
Let's get to Afghanistan in a second. So do you encounter a lot of people that come into the office or give you a call that you're surprised what they don't know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's the first. I do a lot of the outreach for my office, and the first event that I went to was an event held at Michigan Works, and it was the Veterans ID Card event that they held 3 years ago. There were, as I remember, 130 veterans that came through from Grand Traverse County that resided in Grand Traverse County. A vast majority of them were older veterans. World War II, Korea, Vietnam. And I'd have to say it was like 40% of those veterans didn't even know we had a veteran service office, didn't know we had a VA clinic, the CBOC, community bout-based clinic here. They didn't know there were any resources for them. They didn't know any of that. So, I mean, we had 130 veterans. We probably had close to 45 of them. Didn't know there were any resources for them, period. Let alone the widows of veterans that have passed away didn't know that there were any resources for them. It was just astounding to me.
And that's exactly what one of the reasons that my wife Hannah, wanted to start that magazine called Gather Veterans, is to be able to help these veterans around the state of Michigan just have knowledge, and to say, hey, this is what you have available to you, and you didn't even know it. It was right in front of you this whole time to help. How many vets need help, Lucas?
Well, there's different kinds of help. So when it comes down to it, any type of I'd say, I mean, not just veterans, but everybody, but including veterans, to a certain extent, all of them. I've had extremely wealthy veterans that have came into my office asking, and they didn't even ask for me to file a claim, but by the end of our conversation, they wanted to file a claim because it just, and the ones that I've dealt with specifically in this scenario are Vietnam veterans that are well off, planned in life, were able to get jobs and be successful and had planned ahead, and they have great retirements. They didn't want the money. They just wanted something from the government that showed that they did something. So in this scenario, one of my veterans, it's a hearing loss claim. He just wants the claim approved because then it's the government saying, yes, something did happen to you due to your service. He won't file for post-traumatic stress disorder. He refuses to, and I absolutely understand that. But he wanted to do a hearing loss claim just simply because he wanted the government to admit that he served. And that's his way of dealing with it, and there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion. But I'd say to one extent or another, throughout somebody's lifetime, all veterans need help at some point in time.
Yeah. So you served over in Afghanistan?
Correct.
What kind of help, and did you need help when you got back?
Oh, absolutely.
First of all, let me just say thank you.
Absolutely. So it comes down to the different types of help that I was talking about. When I first got out of the military and I moved back home, I went 3 months without getting a job. This is the end of 2011, beginning of 2012. I couldn't get a job. I went 3 months without work. Car was repossessed. Cell phones turned off. I mean, it was a bad time in the economy, but there wasn't really. I wasn't out looking for the help either. You do your out process claim. When you're getting out of the military, they ask you, what happened while you were in, yada, yada. Were you ever injured? All this stuff. And you're like, oh, no, I'm good. I'm fine. So I also don't have a VA. And I finally was able to get a job. I finally was able to get my life kind of rolling and moving. And I finally reached out to the VA, and I run into people, weirdly, no nurses at the VA. I ran into somebody who worked at the office that I currently work in at the mall. She just walked up and asked if I was a veteran and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh, here's my business card. You should come in, take a look at your claim. And I'm like, yeah, probably not. But it got me into the CBOC, the community-based outpatient clinic, and I started getting what's called PE, prolonged exposure, which is a mental health treatment with Mary Tiegler at the CBOC, who's just a saint and will go to the ends of the earth for her veterans. So I started getting, there was very little that I didn't need help with when I first got out of the military. But that's my story. There's a lot of veterans that I run into that get out of the military and they're perfectly fine. But that's just my end of it.
What was one of the main experiences you had in Afghanistan?
So there were quite a few. There's a statistic about Kunar, Afghanistan, where you're in contact with the enemy on average of 15 days out of every month. The winters are slower because it's cold. Summers are worse because it's hot. I'd have to say one of the IEDs I hit, my vehicle struck. while I was in Afghanistan, which is actually March 31st, 2011. That's when that happened. We had huge caravans of fuel, of food, and water that would roll in from other parts of Afghanistan to our main outpost, which is FOB, Forward Observation Base, Bostic. So we'd have to go out and sit on the road 3 days before the convoy would come through to make sure that the Taliban wouldn't place IEDs, that they weren't setting up ambushes and stuff like that. And we'd get shot at while we were sitting there because they'd try and push us out so they could plant IEDs and stuff. And then the caravan would roll through. They'd drop off all their supplies, then they'd leave, and then we could go back to our outpost, which was at that time Hurdle King. So they leave, and we're on our way back, and we're on the Kunar Rivers where our base was. We're rolling down the road, heading back to our base, and I look across the road, and there's a truck. And every time we stop, they stop, and every time we drive, they drive. I'm like, I tell my, because they always blow up the rear truck, which my platoon sergeant made sure that we were always the rear truck whenever possible, because the roads are so narrow, there isn't really room to turn around, let alone pass somebody. So he did his best to make sure that we were always the rear truck. He didn't want to put anybody else's life in danger. So we were rolling, and we stopped at the Afghan National Police Station, where they had a quick meeting, talk about what's going on, Taliban activity, and then we continue mission Charlie Mike down the road. We go into the draw, which is between two ridge lines. That's a draw, kind of a valley. And that's where they place the IEDs, because we have another OP up on top of the mountain and then our main base down below. And the top of the mountain is here, and these are the ridge lines that come down from the mountain because the river, Kunar River, winds. So it cut those out over thousands and thousands of years. So the road follows it also, but when you have an OP here and you have an OP up here on top of the mountain, they can't see inside of here. So they always place the IEDs here, and then they send a bunch of trucks through to drive over them, and you can't tell there's an IED there, and they run lamp cord up the mountain, duct tape a bunch of batteries together, old dead batteries together, and they have enough charge to set it off. So we're cruising through. I remember looking at the spot where the IED was, and then the next thing I know, I wake up in the truck. It had tipped our truck up, so it was standing on its back door, and it was an RG-31, so it was basically an armored school bus. The V-plate, from what I understand, 'cause I was unconscious until I wasn't, tried to crawl out of the truck. The V-plow underneath that's supposed to direct the blast out, the rear bolts broke from the shock and kind of came out as a kickstand to keep the truck standing up. From the windshield / dash forward was all gone. It ended up blowing up underneath the engine block, which didn't have any protection. And just basically cutting that part of the vehicle off. It was gone. I was the gunner in the truck. That was my job. I was White 4 Golf. White is 2nd platoon. My platoon sergeant was 4. That was his declination. So he was White 4, and I was White 4 Golf. I was his gunner. So wake up in the truck. It was one of the few times that I wore my harness. Gunners have harnesses that keep them in the truck. Whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, I have no idea. But I ended up living through it. So I'm going to say it was a good thing that I was wearing my harness that time. My gun ended up like 350 yards behind us. My weapon system was Mark 19. It scraped off my forehead, broken ankle, broken elbow, a bunch of issues. But I was twisting in the truck, just kind of slowly spinning like a parachuter hanging from a tree. And I remember seeing the floor, the radios, the ceiling, my guy's feet, and just kind of rotating around that. I woke up and my head hurt real bad. So I felt my face, and my helmet was gone. And that was the first thing I thought. I was like, oh, I'm not wearing my helmet. I'm supposed to be wearing my helmet. I look at my hands, and one of my gloves got blown off. I have no idea how that happened. My other hand had blood on it. I'm like, okay, so I'm bleeding. That's cool. And kind of like realize what's going on. The Halon system went off, so there's all dusty and stuff inside of our truck. The Halon system is the fire suppression system inside of a vehicle. Anytime it gets blown up, it goes off, sucks all the oxygen out of the vehicle, fills it with this fire retardant dust. Prevent, if anything is on fire at that point in time, it instantly goes out. Save our lives. Luckily, nothing was on fire. It knocks the wind out of you, and then air circulates back into the vehicle through the gunner's turret or any of the doors that would be open. So we realized what's going on. We got blown up, some moaning, some crying. I look down at my feet because I'm suspended, and the back door is now the ground, and my medic is laying on the door with all of my ammo that was stacked next to him on top of him. The strap broke, and so he's got Mark 19 cans aren't light. I can't remember. People will make fun of me for this, but I can't remember the amount of rounds that come in a can. But I think it's something like 48 rounds, and they're 40 millimeter grenades that are all linked. They're not light at all in any way, shape, or form. And those are all, there's a dozen and a half cans laying on top of him. I can just kind of make out parts of his body underneath the cans, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to get Doc. So I use the seats as a ladder to climb down, not realizing my ankle is not doing so well. Climb down the ladder, I end up falling on top of him, which I was like, oh no, that's not good. Luckily, he's unconscious, so he doesn't know what's going on. I push the top hatch, which is now the back door of the vehicle, open, and I start crawling out. Somebody grabs me. And I lose it. I mean, I'm biting, clawing, punching, just swinging at everything. And they're like, Clark, it's us. Clarky, it's us. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It's the guys from the other trucks. They heard the explosion, and they backed up and came back to us. And dragged me over to the edge of the road, which is the mountainside. And then they started getting more people out of the vehicle. What messed me up the most out of this is, and it came out during prolonged exposure, which is a super awesome treatment that worked great for me with Mary Tiegler at the VA, was first thing I saw when I looked up, because my gun's normally above me, so I look up to see what's going on, was my platoon sergeant and my driver's heads on their shoulders towards the middle. And I looked up, and I'm like, well, they're not supposed to be sleeping. That's not right. And my first instinct was to get the hell out of the truck. So when I made the decision to get out of the truck as opposed to climb up and check them to make sure they're not bleeding, they're not dying, they're not dead, I internally felt like I abandoned them. There's literally nothing I could have done for them. I had broken elbow, broken ankle. There's no way in the world I ever would have been able to climb up to them, even if I tried. But I internalized that and used it as something to make myself feel guilty about the way that I react. And I didn't even realize I had done that for probably 2-3 years after that incident in treatment. And so they're pulling everybody out. They pulled me out because I was there. They pulled Doc out. They started getting people out of their seats, pulling them out, everybody various degrees of injuries, from traumatic brain injuries to broken ribs, all kinds of stuff. And then they start climbing up the sides of the truck on the outside and the inside of the truck to try and get my platoon sergeant and my driver out, which Drew was my platoon sergeant. We called him Drew, or sergeant, obviously. But when we're on mission, it's Drew or 4 or whatever. And so they're yelling, Drew, 4, and they're yelling Smith or Fish. We called him Fish. Can't remember why we called him Fish, but they're yelling for him. And the first thing I thought was, oh my God, I left him to die. So they bled out in the amount of time that it took me to get out of the truck and for them to get to him. They bled out and they're dead. As opposed to me checking on them and letting the guys coming know that they need to be out first because they're bleeding. They bled out and they died, and it's my fault. ends up they're fine. They weren't bleeding in any way, shape, or form. They had some compressed fractures in their vertebrae, traumatic brain injury. My platoon sergeant broke the little bone in your throat, which we didn't even know was there. You got a little bone in your throat that prevents your throat from moving. It's mostly cartilage, but he broke that. But I mean, other than that, they're fine. They're reasonably fine. But I didn't know that. We got medevaced out. We got put in the 3 working trucks. We got put in those, taken back to the base, where PJs, Air Force Special Force medics, came and picked us up in helicopters. Sorry about that. And we got airlifted to Bostik, which is our main base. From there to Jalalabad, from there to Bagram, and from there, some of us went to Germany, some of us stayed at Bagram. But that's the short version of what ended up happening that day that I believe affected me the most as the person that I am.
Wow, that's amazing. And I complain when I get a hangnail. It's like
me too.
Come on. No, I appreciate you sharing that story for sure. Why do you guys? I'm a guy. We have an issue with first admitting we need help and secondly getting it. Why do you think that is?
So that's got several prongs on it. Everybody wants to be self-sufficient. Not ask for help. The second thing is you feel like you're asking for a handout. And then another thing is trust of the government, trusting in somebody else, whether it's the government or not. Comes to mental health, man. It's not easy. Reliving those experiences. I've relived that experience thousands of times through treatment, through the outreach that I do for work, through the public speaking that I've done for my personal time while I was in college and stuff like that. It's not easy asking for help because it feels like a weakness. Anytime you need help with something, it feels like, well, I'm a grown man. I should be able to do this on my own. Why am I not able to do this on my own? And sometimes when it comes down to it, you ask the wrong person for help and they tell you no, or they tell you to shut up and go away, or you're begging, being a beggar, you're looking for a handout, all that stuff. And unfortunately that I ran into veterans that have dealt with that in the past, and they'll wait 20 years before they come and ask for help again. And I'm like, whoa, why? Who did you talk to? Give me their name, their social security number, their address, because I'd love to have a conversation with them. It's frustrating, and I've been there. I've had several of my guys from my unit commit suicide since we got back. 1 while we were still in, and 2 after we got out. And it's scary. 1 while we were in, Ernesto Burrell, he never asked for help. He just took off to Nashville because we were stationed at Fort Campbell. Never came back, and they found him in a hotel room. Another asked for help from the VA and got refused the assistance that he had asked for. And then another one, he had a lot of issues. I'd talked to him several times to try to get him to move in with me because all the resources here in Traverse City for veterans. And he wasn't down. He felt lost, like he didn't have any friends. His family didn't understand, and just, decided it was done. And there's thousands of stories, hundreds of thousands of stories across the United States like that, 22 veterans a day kill, or VA statistic on average, 20 veterans a day kill themselves. Of those 20, 1 is actively in VA treatment. 3 have gained access to VA treatment but haven't used it in the last couple of months. And that leaves 16 that have never gained access to VA benefits. And so, that's why I do what I do, because every veteran I can get connected to VA benefits is 1 less that could become a statistic, as per the statistics.
So now that you're on the other side of all of this, and probably to a certain degree still working through daily, I would imagine, but you're better prepped now to know how to handle those kind of things. But would you encourage guys that are dealing with those kind of things that you did, talk about it, seek help, but talk to the right people first of all.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. I mean, would you say those are important things? Talk about it and lose your pride at the door and go find help. Right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, personally, I see a psychologist once a week. You know, I've got a lot going on in my life right now. As obviously, I don't see my psychologist right now because of Corona, but up till recently, and then once all this pandemic stuff is over with and we can return to work as usual, you know, I see a psychologist once a week, man. You know, because I need that non-biased third party. I need it. I'm not saying everybody else does. I know that it helps me. And if somebody feels like they're dealing with the same stuff I am, you know, then I highly suggest they find a non-biased third party. I don't care if it's a psychologist, a social worker, a doctor, a friend, clergyman, you know, the 12-step meetings. I don't care what it is. You know, everybody in the world, I think, needs a non-bias, whether they're going through anything or not. You know, we're human beings. Nobody's perfect.
Oh,
Everybody struggles with something. You know, I have 3 traumatic brain injuries, PTSD, suffer with alcoholism, drug addiction stuff. Man, my brain's all kinds of stuff. You know, but what helps me is making sure that I understand why I am the way I am when it comes to my disabilities, and why I react the way I react, why I do the things that I do. That's what helps me the most. You know, I've done a lot of research into post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injuries, alcoholism, stuff that affects the brain. Um, and I'm probably going to mess up the name of the part of the brain, but the Abdullah Amgata, the back of the brain. Mine was pretty damaged, man. You know, I smacked my face on a lot of stuff, so that whiplash, that backsplash in the brain did a lot of damage. I struggle with reaction. I struggle with my memory and being able to remember things in the correct order, and my brain just makes up stuff that happened. Like I'm upset about a situation, and I'll talk the situation out. Half of it never even happened that I vividly remember happening. You know, and it blows my mind how that can happen.
How old are you?
30. I just turned 30 back in October.
Okay, so the other argument for wanting to get help and to seek help and to talk about it and get it out, I would think is, man, why live the rest of your life just miserable? You know, why not start now to get a better quality of life, right?
Yeah. The other side of that is why continue going through life that with no quality of life. You know, why not just take my own life? That's the easier option. You know, and that's the thing that a lot of veterans struggle with. And I mean, 20 a day kill themselves, but I know that there's a vast majority more that want to but don't.
Okay.
And I know because I'm one of them.
That's a good point.
You know, it is much easier to contemplate taking your own life than trying to figure out on your own how to better yourself. It's so much easier. But at the end of the day, I'm still alive through IEDs, through firefights, through mental health conditions, substance abuse issues, you know, and I believe that is for a reason. I believe I have something to give. I believe that I am here on this earth for a reason. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with religion or a higher power or anything like that. I know that I want to stop or assist other people so that they don't get to the point of where I have been and where my best friends in the entire world, my brothers, have been. Every person that I can prevent from having to go there is the reason why I do things like this interview. I do things like my job. I do things like public speaking, and I go to Munson and speak on Veterans Day, and I hold events and stuff like that. I do the DK 5K, the Drew Kostick Memorial 5K, just because every time I do something like that, I think that maybe there's one person that needed to hear what I had to say. If there's one person, then the 500 people there that didn't understand a single thing I said, didn't make sense to them, they didn't like it, whatever, perfectly fine. I'm absolutely okay with that. If one person shows up to an event that I put on, and that person got help from it, my mission is successful. I don't care if it costs me $1,000. I don't care if it costs my office $1,000,000. You know, it's worth it just being able to help that one person.
Yeah, because you never know the ripple effect after that, right?
Absolutely. What's that one person going to go do? They can cure cancer, man. You know.
Yeah, you never know. Well, we're speaking with Lucas Clark in the Grand Traverse County area. He works for Grand Traverse Veteran Affairs Office. Lucas, before we close the meeting, just speak to those guys out there, and women for that matter. Excuse me.
Absolutely.
Women out of it, but speak to the veterans out there. Just give them an encouraging word right now, if you could.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I've talked with thousands of veterans. I've had tears and blood and everything else on my desk and everything you can think of. And, you know, at the end of the day, I know that there are resources out there. I know that there are people that care. And I think one of the biggest struggles veterans have, because I've had it, and I know that there's a lot of veterans like me, whether they're male, female, or anything in between, is that we are worth the help. There is help out there. There are people who genuinely want to help. They care, and we are worth being cared about. We are worth the trouble. Every person is, regardless of what they've done or what they've been through. I know that throughout my struggles that I didn't see myself as worth helping. I saw myself as a lost cause that, you know, at the end of the day, what difference would it make if I'm gone anyways? You know, and here I sit helping veterans get benefits through the VA. So, you know, there was something that I could do. You know, I went back to college. I decided to work on myself with relationships and work with myself with a psychiatrist and all this stuff I decided that I was going to do, as opposed to deciding that life wasn't worth living anymore. Because that's a very valid question that you had asked before. You know, why not try and better my life? It sucks. Trying to better your life genuinely sucks a lot of the time. One of the greatest things that helped me was life is a roller coaster, and I know it's cliche as hell, but you know, there's ups and there's downs, and downs can last a very long time, but they last as long as you let them. At the end of the day, if you decide to continue living on the downhill side of life, then that's your decision. Nobody can make you do anything. You can't let yourself rationalize doing something that you're going to blame on somebody else. You know, I've been arrested, I've been to jail, I've done all kinds of ridiculous stuff, and I've blamed it on other people. You know, if you've been through half the things I've been through, you'd have a drinking problem too. You know, but at the end of the day, that's not rational, man. You know, that's not a common sense. It's not logic. It doesn't make sense to deal with life that way. You know, if you'd been through half the things I've been through, you'd be helping other people too. Because I know where I have been, and I don't want anybody else to be there.
It kind of goes back to your story a little bit, because when you think about it, you guys are trained to do things together, to be a team, to be a unit. And the way you felt, you know, going back to seeing your fellow brothers there, and then living with that, thinking that you had left them alone, you kind of have to take that same mentality into civilian life, right? I mean, like,
absolutely.
Why now am I a lone soldier? You know, when I've been with my brothers through all these years of service, or maybe you weren't active duty, whoever you are out there listening, but you still had that mentality in the military of brotherhood. So take that with you into Monday through Friday life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's the number one thing veterans miss when they get out, that camaraderie. You know, the guys I was in the military with, ironically, most of us went to basic training together too. And then a lot of us got sent to 101st Airborne, 1st 32nd Cavalry. And then, so we all, by the time we deployed or got back from deployment, we knew everybody's family. We knew everybody's girlfriends, husbands, wives, all of it. We knew how to piss each other off. We knew how to make each other happy if we were already pissed off. We knew everything about each other. And then you get out and you go home and there's nothing. There's your high school friends, your high school people you knew, whether you're friends or not. And and the reality of that, them still being in the same place as you were 3, 4, 6 years ago. They're either in the local college still, which in Traverse City is a 2-year college. So if they're still going to that college, they're a rock star like me, because I went to NMC for like 6 years. They dropped out of college, or they're working the family business, whether it's construction trades or whatever else is going on. And I'm not trying to dog on people who still live in their hometown, but at the end of the day, my personal experience is the people that I ended up hanging out with. There was a reason, and it wasn't a healthy one. They drank like me, they partied like me, they did the stuff that I learned how to do in my off time in the military. And that's not a healthy way to live a lifestyle in the public, in the civilian side of things. Forgive me. And so there's that camaraderie is a huge thing. Luckily, in Traverse City, we have a huge veteran population and tons of resources, lots of nonprofits, lots of places for veterans to be able to hang out and see other veterans that are like them, deal with things, talk with things out, stuff like that.
Well, we sure appreciate your time. Thank you for taking the time to just share your story and to help others see that help is possible. Help is there. You guys can also go to gatherveterans.com, an online version, a great place to get some help and to see other guys' stories, other people's stories as well. So, Lucas, real quick, just give maybe your email or the website they can go to find out more information or contact you personally.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're going to want to Google search Grand Traverse Department of Veterans Affairs. Our office is the first one's going to pop up. They have our phone number on there, emails, all that stuff. You want to write down my email? It's Clark, CLARK, @grandtraverse.org. Again, our office is closed right now, but go ahead and give our office a call anyways. Shoot me an email. Still working from home. Love to be able to answer questions, find resources for whoever.
Awesome. All right. Thanks again, Luke.
Thanks for having me.